Life, culture and current events from a biblical perspective. 2020 with Neil Johnson on Vision.
You may have heard about an amazing phenomenon that has been happening across the world where the church is under heavy persecution. It is so amazing, it's almost hard to believe. But the stories, they just keep coming, of the appearance of a man in white in the dreams of people who have not, oftentimes, even met a Christian believer. It'll be your opportunity to understand more deeply this phenomenon as Open Doors is on the road for what they're calling a Man in White tour. And let's talk with Nick Bennett from Open Doors. He's joining us. Nick, welcome along to 2020.
No, it's a pleasure to be here, Neil. Thank you.
Nick, it's Open Doors Live, an opportunity for people who are supporters of Open Doors, and no doubt you want to get some new supporters of Open Doors too, and you've actually got someone to introduce to your supporters who has actually had this experience, a dream where he saw the man in white.
Yes, that's right. I'm looking forward to it. His name is Armin. He now lives in Australia, and he's out here planting churches. He's got one in Brisbane, that's the mother church, and then some kind of sister affiliates in Sydney, Melbourne and Adelaide. So he's up to good work here, but yes, he's formerly of Iran, and I met him, I chatted over the phone today, but it felt like I met him because we clicked like that without having spoken before. He reminded me that Iran used to have 7 million Christians when it was known as Persia 1,400 years ago. And at the time, it was very, very intense to live there. And they suffered enormous persecution, death, massacres, horrible scenario. Fast forward to 2022, Iran has now got the fastest growing church. But to your point, Armin, who was formerly following Islam, he was a Muslim, had an appearance. A vision of Jesus in the middle of the night in a dream. Now, at the same time, in the same house, in a different room, his mother had the same experience, and so too did his sister. Now, as you said in your intro, it is a common scenario now. We're hearing lots of these stories from the Muslim states of people who are perhaps curious about Christ, having these visions and dreams of the man in white, and there are heaps of references through the Bible, reverence given there. Revelations, there's a mention of the man in white appearing all through the Bible. So, yeah, an incredible story that he will share with us at Open Doors Live.
Nick, as you say, there's a compounding of this phenomenon when other members of the family are having the same dream at the same time. As I understand it is such a compelling vision that comes in this dream that the person who has the dream is then on the lookout for someone who can explain who this man in white is. And this is where the connection comes.
Yeah, that's right. Look, I can't tell you Armin's story, but I do know that there is a connection to a man that he knew for years. I believe, I don't want to give you a spoiler here, but I believe he was a cab driver. Now, someone gave him a Bible, we're in Iran now, which he carried with him for many, many years, and because it's tough to be a Christian there. You've got to keep this stuff on the lowdown. You've got to be secret about it. And he didn't quite know what to do with the Bible. But after Armin had this dream, this night, this man was inspired to knock on Armin's door and speak with him, and I think present him with the Bible. So the story goes, but Armin will tell it better than me.
We often, as Christians, recognise the power of a great commission, that someone is sent, someone goes, someone proclaims the gospel, and we wonder about what happens in lands where there isn't that proclamation or there can't be that proclamation because of persecution. But this is just an amazing way the whole thing is short-circuited. It's like a miraculous event that brings the presence of Jesus into the lives of people, even without someone who's a preacher.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're pretty common stories that we do here from the field. We send a lot of folks over to the fields. You know, Open Doors has a presence now in somewhere between 60 and 70 different countries. We have to keep it a little bit quiet on some fronts because it's just too dangerous to reveal what's going on. But there are all sorts of amazing stories of people just being so forthright in their faith and the pursuit of it, even under such intense persecution. It's mind-blowing. I spoke to the guy who founded Open Doors Australia, Dean Keeney, who's still with us at the age of 80. He's on the podcast we made just the other day. And he said he's blown away when he travels around the world as to why people continue to follow Christ. He said if they didn't want to be persecuted, well, they could just stop and there wouldn't be any more persecution. And he's so impressed by people's commitment to the faith, no matter the cost. They still keep proclaiming Jesus as their saviour, even when it can mean losing your life. Because think about it, it could be that easy. You know what? If I want to avoid persecution, what do? Well, I just stop doing what no one likes me pursuing. If the government says, no, you shouldn't be a Christian, then you could take the easy way out, right? But no one's doing that.
Just a reminder, isn't it, that in the Gospels we read when there were people who were deserting Jesus, Jesus turns to his disciples and says, what about you? And I think it was Peter who turned to Jesus and said, where will we go, Lord? You are the one who has those words of life. Hey, Open Doors Live tomorrow night in Brisbane on the 11th, Melbourne Thursday the 13th, Sydney on the 15th, opendoors.org.au to be part of this. And this is actually a pretty special gathering, isn't it? Because not only are you going to introduce your supporters to Armin, but it's also a moment to reflect on your late founder, Brother Andrew, who's only really just passed away. That's going to be a significant part of it too, Nick?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, look, it was the 27th of September. So just not even a week, a bit over a week ago, I suppose, and a couple of weeks nearly. A huge loss, not unexpected. I mean, if you're 94, I think you're doing pretty well. And we know he's gone to a wonderful place, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to come back. But we do need to stand and take some time at these events to think and remember, recall, reflect on the incredible contributions that Brother Andrew gave. His story, I'm sure your listeners know it. I guess you've all had a good read of God Smuggler, which is an insight into what really went down. But an amazing fellow who didn't find faith until he's kind of, early 20s, maybe mid-20s. And yet what he did with his faith was so impressive and so impactful, because he's the guy who's enabled us to be in all those nations I spoke about, standing alongside persecuted Christians. And he gave so much to the mission, put his life at risk, but miraculously, he never suffered any danger. He was exposed to danger, but never suffered any harm. He was never imprisoned. He was never beaten up. How he did all that is just beyond me. It can only be God's work.
And the work of Open Doors has blossomed around the world. And when he was an operative supporting the persecuted church, perhaps the numbers were not like they are now. And I know your own estimates, 360 million people under heavy persecution around the world. No doubt on the night too, Nick, you'll be delivering some news from some of the fields where the church is under heavy persecution. Which sort of nations do you think there'll be detail about?
Yeah, look, there will be some moments definitely where we pepper the night for context. But look, at the moment, if you want to have a look at the top 5, which is a list you don't want to be on, you've got Afghanistan at 1, 2 is North Korea. I expect those 2 will probably swap out when the World Watch List comes out next year. And number 3, Somalia. 4 is Libya, and 5 is Yemen. And we could go on. There's Eritrea and Nigeria. And look, I'm new to this role. I'm learning even places like Mexico. I was dumbfounded to hear that it's actually difficult to pursue some paths of Christianity in Mexico. I struggled to understand that until I read the context. So traditionally, for example, a lot of Mexicans do follow Roman Catholicism, but if you choose to perhaps consider being a Pentecostal, then life can be hard for you.
I had a conversation about this just recently. It's a difficult one to swallow when you've got Christians persecuting Christians. No doubt that might come up on the night. Hey, Nick Bennett from Open Doors Live. And for listeners, it's not too late to register to be a part of this in Brisbane tomorrow night on the 11th of October, Melbourne this Thursday on the 13th, and in Sydney Saturday on the 15th. Now, you can register, you can get a ticket at opendoors.org.au. That's opendoors.org.au. There'll be significant events. It's been pretty tough over the past few years with COVID, and here Open Doors is back in front of supporters, and you might be the next new supporter to be a part of it. opendoors.org.au to get all the details about venues and times when it starts. But Nick Bennett from Open Doors. Nick, thanks so much for giving us a heads up on what's happening with this Open Doors Live. Thanks for being with us on 2020.
God bless you, mate. Thank you.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.